When we value profits over people on a society scale, there's going to be certain jobs that only a psychopath is going to be good at. One such job is nightcrawling. This job involves parasitically profiting over others' suffering, hoping to catch certain crimes, the bloody ones, in certain neighborhoods, the rich ones, to sell to the highest bidder. And yes, this is a real-life job. Dan Gilroy's Nightcrawler is the ultimate how-to guide for this occupation. So if you want to learn how to be a successful psychopath, then pay attention, because Louis Bloom is one of the most successful psychopaths I've ever seen in any type of media. Watching Nightcrawler, which stars Jake Gyllenhaal, one of my personal favorite actors, is like watching an alien try to take over the world. The story centers Louis Bloom, but it's really a message on how people like Louis Bloom, a complete psychopath, can succeed in our society. And if a person like Louis Bloom can succeed in our society, then what is our society really valuing, and what does that say about us? And how capitalism can incentivize profit over anything else. And the scariest part about Nightcrawler is that Louis wins. We watch throughout the entire film as he leverages all of his power to push his success further. And if you didn't know, a Nightcrawler is someone who supplies footage to news outlets. They're independent, and because of the existence of this job, there's a direct incentive for Nightcrawlers to profit off of others' suffering, record the most vile and disturbing things to sell to media, because the worse things that he can record, the better they'll sell. The film also exposes how news media and news companies really are willing to twist truths and forego honesty in order to make profit. And it's extremely disturbing that throughout the movie we see all these disgusting acts committed by Louis, and he is just rewarded time after time. He's manipulating crime scenes, breaking into houses, and hiding crucial evidence for police to solve a crime in order to further his career growth. And the murders he commit are just required in order for him to climb the ladder. Louis Bloom is so scary because he's a psychopath and he completely lacks empathy. Jake Gyllenhaal does an excellent job performing Louis Bloom. He really sells that the character has no soul behind his eyes other than the lust for success. He talks as if he's reading from a Walmart HR pamphlet. The corpo speak is insane. It's like he's read online how to write a CV and he just has committed that to his personality. It's really uncanny to watch because nobody talks like this in real life. Seriously, the only emotions that we ever see Lou have is ecstasy over one of his schemes succeeding or complete rage if it fails. In every single moment that we watch, he is not a real person. There's no one behind his eyes. There's literally the one scene where he's screaming to himself in the bathroom after a plan fails, and then the multitudes of times when he's succeeding, he's just feeling ecstatic, and the music swells and it's almost like a romantic moment. We can tell by the things that he cares about and his actions that there's no one behind the mask that he wears. This character is extremely devoid of any sense of humanity. Nightcrawling being a job is really problematic for everyone in society because anyone can be a Nightcrawler's next paycheck. And people like Louis Bloom will obviously be drawn to this type of job because they lack empathy that most people have, and that's ultimately an advantage for Lou and other psychopaths in this industry. And yes, he's not following the laws. He's succeeding partly because he's breaking them, killing his competition and getting away with it. But that's another thing. Like the way that the system is set up, justice cannot ever be brought to Lou because he's smart enough to clear his tracks, and obviously he has had years of being a thief. And I think more importantly, the film is kind of recognizing that there's limitations to justice. There's a systematic failure in the justice system, hence the reason why Lou gets to walk off into the sunset at the end, because if the justice system was not a failure, then Louis would be in jail. That's something I think Nightcrawler could have expanded more on, is this theme of justice and why having someone like Lou in the situation would make that system fail, or essentially pointing out the holes in the justice system. Like, I think it would have been more on track for them to say the detectives looked over Lou, they believed his story, or etc. Because the way that it is now, it's basically saying that Lou is so smart and covered his tracks so well that the justice system can't do anything. It doesn't doesn't offer a critique on the justice system and explains that the reason why Lou got away with it is because he covered his tracks. I think it's a missed opportunity and doesn't really explain or critique society in a way that I think Nightcrawler set out to do. We never actually learn where Lewis came from. We don't hear anything about his past, and he is essentially just an alien dropped into this world. And I think this lack of characterization emphasizes the social critique within the movie. It's also important to keep in mind that having no empathy in real life isn't a great thing for negotiation. It's not a great thing for business, because in reality, if you don't know what the other person wants, what the other person is feeling, then there's no way for you to know where you stand in this negotiation. There's no way to know what the other person wants, and there's no way to reach a win-win. And the best strategy for negotiation is firm but fair. This is game theory, not MatPat, but economic-based game theory, where it's proven that the best negotiation strategy is to be firm and fair, overarching all types of different games. Now, there is an aspect that the audience will sort of like about Lewis. It's his competency. I can't personally help feeling that Lou is pretty cool for achieving all of his goals, like even though I know he's a psycho. This is like very honest of me, but I don't know. I can't help it. I don't think it's helping that Jake Gyllenhaal is one of my favorite actors either. And in the movie, he's not postured as anybody who's cool. He's actually pretty pathetic. He's groveling over Nina, trying to get him in bed, and he's having little baby freakouts about not doing what he wants. Like he's pretty pathetic when you take a step back. Like how sad and pathetic it is to only care about money and power in life. And that's the thing about writing a psychopath, is like in real life, usually psychopaths aren't super competent like this. Like they're people who just lack empathy and who are completely selfish. It doesn't mean that they're smart. I think it's really rare to have like a Machiavellian psychopath. And it's not like we live in a meritocracy. There's still the huge problem of getting out of the circumstances of one's birth. You can be the smartest, most savvy businessman there was, and you could still end up unsuccessful. And it's interesting that Nightcrawler is directly profiting off of other suffering, whereas in real life, usually the corporations are indirectly profiting off of everyone's suffering. Like the way certain businesses get advantages by underpaying their staff. Walmart. I mean, that's the great thing about Nightcrawler, is that it's a movie about society, and that just opens up the door for so many different conversations, but mainly focusing on shady business practices and what it would be like if you placed a psychopath in society. Like what would they do to get ahead, and how disturbing it is that the structures of society are set up in a way that people like Lou can get ahead. And I'm not like a turbo communist or anything. I think capitalism has done overall good for society, but there's definitely a next step, and Bolshevikism just ended like in the 90s. So I think there's room for progress and further research into the topic. Now, there's a character who is Lewis's foil. His name is Rick, and he is the most tragic character in the entire film because he's innocent and gets completely taken advantage of by Lou, and eventually is murdered by Lou. It's really sad to see because Rick is a disadvantaged minority of the populace. He's a homeless person, and honestly just an all-around chill guy. The audience, I think, likes him because he is pretty naive and he's suffering a lot by Lou. Like he's getting paid $30 where Lou is making thousands of dollars. And one of the worst parts with Rick is his eventual downfall by Lou, and this only comes when he asks for a raise. It's not the entire story, because Rick does kind of leverage his own power against Lou, saying, I know what we're doing right now is a crime. And if you haven't seen the movie, this is because Lou followed a burglary and murder that happened in a house where he essentially hid the license plate of the criminals and then followed them to their house and is trying to get footage of them committing more crimes in order to promote his business. So Rick being made aware of this plot is obviously pretty disturbed and is now demanding more money for him to participate in this illegal plot. But Rick isn't really guilty for demanding more money in this situation because he's actually homeless. Like he's sleeping on other people's couches or in storage units. I don't blame him for wanting more money and sticking around this illegal plot. So Rick says, if you don't give me more money, I'm going to go tell on you. And Lou says at the end, after killing him, him, I can't jeopardize my company's success to retain an untrustworthy employee. I mean, it's crazy when he's put into a corner, like he puts everyone else into a corner. Instead of doing what they want, he retaliates. He does not give a single centimeter and kills her. And I just noticed that his business is literally parasitic. He would not exist without the suffering of others. At least his business wouldn't exist. I'll just quickly list out all of Lou's crimes. He's a thief. He's a murderer 2 times, killing Rick and his competitor. He's a essayer. He coerces Nina to indulge him. Side note, I don't know a better way of saying that, so don't get mad at me. There's another movie called There Will Be Blood that really reminded me of Nightcrawler, where a psychopathic businessman succeeds in his industry. Except for in There Will Be Blood, we see him when he's older and he's a lot more sad. Like, he's a drunk. Sure, he has a lot of money, but his kid hates him. He has no family, no relationships. The only person that can bear to be around him is the person that he pays. In contrast, Nightcrawler ends the dialogue at the point of Lou's climax, his success in business. So it's a much more horrific ending. We get no catharsis in his downfall, and we're just kind of left to assume that he ultimately succeeds in his mission, which is a pretty depressing ending, but it serves really well as a critique of our society. The difference between There Will Be Blood is that that's way more of a character study than Nightcrawler. It also serves in the same way as a social critique, but there's a lot more insight we get of how There Will Be Blood's main character interacts with others. Like, in There Will Be Blood, there's a lot more nuance with his character. Like, for instance, he has a fake dead brother that comes in and essentially worms his way into his life because he knows that he has money. And this shows that there is more nuance. There's a potential break in this psychopathic tendency that the main character has. And we don't see that in Nightcrawler at all. Lou is completely one-dimensional, and I think that makes the story less interesting in terms of character study. I don't think this was an unintentional choice. I think the scriptwriters knew that it wasn't a character study, and the movie ultimately serves as a critique to our current society. Parts that Nightcrawler have that are lacking in There Will Be Blood are moments where Lou is comedic. Like, we see him and he's not intentionally trying to be funny or anything, but the way that he's acting is so weird and alien that it comes off as funny. And one of the funniest scenes, to me at least, is when he's kind of slyly trying to ask Nina out on a date, and he expresses himself saying, "I'm focusing on framing. A proper frame not only draws the eye into a picture, but it keeps it there longer, dissolving the barrier between the subject and the outside of the frame." And she responds, "Is that blood on your shirt?" It's just kind of gold. Like, he is so non-aware of his situation that he has blood all over him literally minutes after touching dead bodies so that he can get a better shot. And he's asking this girl out, trying to rizz her up. There's also something to be talked about how Nina changes throughout the movie, and the way that she does change, she becomes a worse person. She's honestly on Lou's side by the end of it. And the strange thing is, I guess what the movie is trying to say is that Lou's whole attitude, his behavior, his psychopathy, his non-empathy, it's a virus. It's passing on to other people through, we see Nina, she becomes Lou's biggest fan, saying, "I think Lou is inspiring all of us to reach a little bit higher." This reach a little bit higher quote, I could hear that coming straight out of the CEO of Walmart as his employees are starving. Please hit subscribe if you liked the video, if you made it this far. Tell me what other movies I should look into if you think I'd like it. And yeah.